You're listening to the StudioPTBO podcast, where we talk all things marketing to help you build and grow your business online. Welcome to the latest episode. And welcome to the StudioPTBO podcast. We are back, and we're back at it again with another guest. This is something pretty exciting. Like, we're having a good day so far. I feel good. Neil feels good. We're all good. Life's good. I can't complain. Neil Morden, how you doing? Life's good. You doing well over there?
I'm doing excellent, Cody, and we're having no technical issues today whatsoever. It's just been one of those days.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood.
We are super stoked and grateful to have one of the sort of household names in PR in Canada and beyond, quite frankly, on the show today. His name is Eric Alper. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Oh, it's so good to be here. When you were talking about household names, I was like, who's on? And so, yeah, so that's good. It's my pleasure to be here. I like the show a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And Eric, it's been doing this for, I don't want to age you, but a quarter century you've been in the PR industry, Eric? And
Yeah, I started when I was 3. So that would make me 27 years old.
Yeah.
And I've done it now since for 25 years. Yeah, I did it. It's the only job really that I've had since I got into university, and I never wanted to do anything else. And I know I'm one of the lucky ones to be able to continue to do what I'm doing.
Why PR? Why was it? Did you have this moment as a kid when you realized, wow, you really love just building relationships and helping people out? Or what was there a moment? I know your grandfather, and maybe you can walk us through that. Your grandfather opened the first licensed blues bar in Toronto. Was there connection to that or music, PR?
Yeah, my grandfather started a bar in 1948 called Grossman's Tavern, and it's still there. And it was one of the first places to not only have live music, but also mix alcohol with music. And from then on in, the world just went to hell in a handbasket. But, when I was a kid, my earliest memories of what I really enjoyed was listening to music. And I kind of saved up all my money that my parents gave me, or that, they used to take me to the department store, and I would just sit there and just stare at album covers. And to me, it was a world that I had no idea about. It's kind of like, if you suddenly find yourself attracted to Dungeons and Dragons or sci-fi. These were my superheroes. I had no idea about the world except the world of the Bee Gees or Donny Osmond or Shana Na. I mean, these people were like Luke Skywalker to me. So when I was 13 years old, I had a subscription to Billboard magazine, and only to read about these people who had a record label or worked for a distributor or wrote the songs. I had no idea what the industry even meant. But I was fascinated with the stories that I was reading about, and I learned in my teenage years about publicity and promotion, and that there were people that worked as a liaison between the record labels and the media. And I was always fascinated with the media as well, with why certain stories were getting written, why certain stories were not, and what was happening during the economy, during sociology, the psychology of actually a hit song, because I knew that nothing really was ever created in a vacuum. Where you come from was important. The people that you were listening to was important. What was going on with the unemployment rate was important. What was going on racially, what was going on politically, all that stuff seeped into it. So when I was sitting there in class learning about history, I was always thinking, but like, what was the music back then? And so that kind of led to working for the campus newspaper and radio station at York University, where I went to. And the day afterwards, I started a record label, which quickly became a PR company. And that's what I've done ever since then, really. So to me, the fascination of PR was never really about PR. And it was never really about the relationship, to be honest with you, about working with the media, because those people come and go. But it was mostly about telling the stories about why the song was written and what makes this one so different as opposed to the next one or the other 1,400 press releases that you'll get.
there's obviously a lot that goes into making a hit song, as far as like, just from the production to, the creation to the PR. And I think like we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to our podcast, a lot of business owners, marketing reps. I'm really curious, like, what are like some common things that you see happen in the music industry, as far as from a press standpoint, that when somebody creates like a hit song and it really gets out there and the message is, really, it really gets out there and you have the ability to kind of like reach a mass amount of people. Like, I guess, are there any key principles that you see in the music industry that can be kind of applied or in like entrepreneurship or, for business owners? Like, obviously there's a cross between that, but I'm curious to know, like, if there's like key common principles that you see musicians do that kind of get that hit song or get that hit press release. Like, what are some key tactics or key principles that you've seen?
Yeah, there's actually a lot more, I think, than people realize. I mean, you first and foremost, you've got to have the passion to do what you're doing. Whether you're a musician, whether you're the owner of a variety store, whether you're an accountant, you really have to love what you do, because chances are you'll probably be doing this a lot for a number of years, maybe even the rest of your life. So you've got to learn how to take the good with the bad. You can't be too up and too down. But I knew I was one of the lucky ones that I found my passion really, really early in life. And some people do and some people don't. But, you have to truly, truly love what you do, because if you don't, just get out of the way and go do something else. Mm-hmm. There's no rules to this life. You're not in a race with anybody else. You don't get a gold medal at the end of your life. You can't take it with you. So there are people that are going to always be hungrier than you, that are going to work faster than you, that are going to work better than you, and they're going to work cheaper than you. So you have to understand that those people that are gunning for your job or gunning for your client base, those are the people that are your competition day in and day out. The other big aspect of it is that you've got to find your road. So you got to find your lane in the business world that somebody else isn't doing. And again, you can have the same product. You can be, a chiropractor, and knowing that there are so many of them. But what really sets you apart from everybody else? What's your story about how you started in this business that makes somebody want to build the connection with you? And that connection is the most important part of it. When you're creating a hit song, it's not really about the gadgets. It's not about how good you look in the video. It's not really the producer or how much money you're spending on the record label. It's really about the fact that you created the song in complete isolation for the most part. And now you want 50,000 people around the world through no connection to you whatsoever, feels the same way about this song than you do. They feel they have their own stories, their own memories that are relatable to the song. They think the song means something to them because they're putting their own memories on it. Businesses are the exact same way. When you're starting a business, it's not really about you that created the business. It's really about your customer base. And the minute that you stop thinking about your customers and you lose your eye on the ball, that's when you start to falter. That's when businesses start to lose momentum. And that's when companies go bankrupt. One of the first things that I learned really early on, and I don't know why this still stands out, but, business people will say that when you're just about to declare bankruptcy, or if you're going through some trouble financial time in your business, that's when you put the gas to the metal and you start to spend way more money than you ever have in terms of advertising, because you really have nothing to lose except for trying to get the word out there. And businesses are and the music industry are a lot like that you have to care about your fan base, and your fan base are your customers, because without them, you really, truly are nothing.
Yeah, I agree, Eric, 100% on that. What does, again, you've been in the industry 25 years. How have you seen the emergence of, modern day social media and traditional media? Do you now use sort of still a hybrid mix of both in terms of deploying a strategy for clients? Does it depend on, how old they are, what demographic they're going after, whether they should go on TikTok, Instagram, or what's sort of your strategy now? How has it evolved in this modern era of social?
Yeah, yeah, I started well before MySpace was even a thing. So a lot of, a lot of what I was doing back in the day was literally spending all night faxing one by one these press releases, and then waiting for that awful noise to come in and then hit start. But no matter what the technology, it certainly made it a lot easier, but it also made the competition that much harder. When you had to spend time picking up the phone and actually calling somebody or sending out a fax, you knew that you had that information that wasn't easily available. There was no Google. You couldn't look it up on the internet. You literally had a filofax or a sheet of paper with all the people and all your
Right.
contact, and then you just sat there and called it. Now, and so maybe those people might have gotten, I don't know, maybe 20 pitches a day, maybe 50 a week. Now everybody has access to Google. We can all find out each other's email addresses quite easily. So, people in the media are now getting, 1,500 to 2,000 emails a day just based on pitches. So the competition is that much more fierce. So I use a little bit of a mixture of personally talking to each of the artists one by one every day, or at least every second day, about the things that I think that they should be posting online. And it's not just about like, hey, go find a photo of Johnny Cash and stick a lyric underneath it, because that stuff goes viral. It doesn't. It only goes viral when you have that connection and that your audience kind of enjoys what you're doing. And that's something that I've learned from firsthand experience with going on something like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and kind of creating content and posting things that I like, and I just happen to find a whole bunch of other people that like it too. So the big changes of social media have really allowed the artist to go direct to the fans more than ever before. I mean, when I was growing up, the only way that I knew that Duran Duran had a new haircut was waiting for the new issue of Rolling Stone magazine to come to the newsstand, which was once every 2 weeks. Now, I mean, if you're not online every single day, your fans will think that you died. There's and
So
true. We see that with the YouTubers, where their fans get angry if they don't stick to a strict schedule of finding and posting a new video every Tuesday and Thursday at 5:00. If you haven't posted on Tuesday by 5:30, you start to lose followers and you start to lose subscribers, because they actually demand this of you. And so it really boiled down to, social media has certainly made it a lot easier to garner that fan base directly and bypass the traditional people of the record labels and the publicists and the distributors and record stores. But it certainly made it, I think, a lot harder, because our brains, I'm not so sure, are just simply wired to do with social media. You give people the ability to do some good in the world, and a lot of people are. But every single day I see more and more blogs and sites and daily newspapers and monthly magazines actually cut off the comment section to the general public, because there's so much unbelievable racist trash out there that they just can't handle that source of freedom. They think that it's okay to start hating on something just because they can, and it makes us actually a worse society than better. But for the most part, though, I think there's never been a better time and a worse time to be an artist. It's an amazing time where you get to actually create something and put it out to the world in a matter of hours if you wanted to. But it's a worse time because so can everybody else. So your competition just got that much harder.
Now I'm really curious, because we've become really bullish over PR, and it's something that our agency StudioPTBO has really been focusing on, about getting more earned media opportunities. So I think that this is going to provide a lot of value to this question is going to provide a lot of value to our audience, passionate, energetic entrepreneurs, because I think what you do, like with the people that you work with, can be applied towards obviously the entrepreneurial community. So I'm really curious, when a client comes to you for the very first time, they want to work with Eric Alper, they come to you, like, what are the steps that you take in order to implement kind of a system or a process for your clients? And maybe walk us through what you're doing in order to kind of get them out in front of more people, to get these media buys, I guess you could say, or these media, this earned media. Like, what are you doing in order to make that a reality for your clients?
Yeah, for sure. So usually when a client contacts me, I get them to send me a blank check, and then I fill it out for the number 1 followed by a lot of zeros. No. Usually, usually what happens is that I've got a list of the assets that I that I ask them to kind of fill out. And it's things like bios and photos and music and 3 to 25 lines about the latest video or single that's a little bit separate from their bio. But all of that details helps me write out the press release. And it also gives me a little bit of detail to figure out what kind of assets that they do have. Are they a brand new artist? Are they a brand new company? Have they just started? Have they had media in the past? What kind of media have they received? And what media do they think that they deserve? And that usually tells me a lot in the first 5 minutes of the conversation. And we usually don't get there in the first 5 minutes. I usually don't say, well, what do you think that you deserve? Because everybody will say, well, I think I deserve the front page of the Toronto Star. And it's like, okay, well, unless you're kind of embroiled in some scandal, that might be something that you might not want. But for a lot of the times, it's just a matter of finding out where they are in the world, and then knowing about the media with what they're covering, see if they kind of can fit. And it goes back to what I was saying about finding that road and finding that lane. If you're not doing anything special and you happen to be, whether you're a 17-year-old female pop singer or whether you're a new bakery that's in Peterborough, if you're doing the same things as everybody else, well, why you? And that's where the relationships come in of like, well, why you? Well, because I have Eric working for me and I'm the one that's going to promote it. And they know that I don't work with anybody crap. And so they tend to give me maybe a little bit more media because they trust me more, because they know that I'm going to give them what they need in terms of writing the story. Because that's the other thing too, that the media has to, in a matter of seconds, whether you're a band or whether you're a brand, you have to realize that it only takes a couple of seconds for somebody in the media to decide whether or not if they're going to write about you. So they're thinking about, well, how can I write 500 words about this? Or can they talk on the radio for 7.5 minutes about their new product or new idea or new initiative that they're doing? And all of those things I try to find out as much as possible in order for me to create that press release so that I know where it can kind of steer to. You bring up a really interesting point about earned media, though, because I think we all know, obviously the traditional media, when it comes to print media, is kind of dropping year after year after year. There's more centralized locations for stories to be written, meaning that the Toronto office of the Canadian Press Newswire, who happen to write the stories for 190 newspapers across the country, are more heavily relied these days, more and more, than, say, maybe the local writer from the Peterborough Examiner. If you just take a look at their staff numbers and their masthead, that's dropping too. So you try to figure out, well, is their paper being shrunken down because people aren't reading a print edition, or are they keeping the same staff and they just happen to be writing longer pieces online? Are they getting way more hits online than they are with the newspaper? Because if they are, then maybe we need more video than just photographs. We all know now that videos up on YouTube, whether you're a business or whether you're an artist, they do way more than just a great photo these days, because studies have shown that people will stay on the site longer if there's video. And that helps that outlet sell advertising through Google AdWords or through the advertising department. So the longer that they stay on the site, the more money they're going to make. The more money they make, the more that they have a chance to stay in business and then keep creating stories. That's why, as much as we might not like as a reader, I'm not one of them, but that's why sometimes whenever I hear complaints about Kanye West running for president or, another Kardashian story, it's like, you can't fault the media, because this actually, the general public is the one that dictates what the media almost should be writing about when it comes to those kind of levels, because they know the clicks, they know what's working, and celebrity stuff works really, really well. And that kind of forces all of us in the PR business to kind of take a look at that and say, well, we can't get Kim Kardashian to sponsor our product, but maybe there's local celebrities. What can you learn from Kim Kardashian that can teach you about your brand? And that's the fascinating thing to me. Is like, I may not watch the Kardashians, but they're doing branding really, really well in 2020, and that's kind of those secret sauces that you can kind of bring to your own brand.
I agree, Eric. They're in the zeitgeist, and you're watching and observing. And I love how thoughtful and tactical and contextualized you are to approaching PR. I have to ask, if my PR strategy if I was working with you would be to get on your Twitter feed every day. No, I have to compliment you. You have 700 and almost 705,000 followers on Twitter. I love your strategy or lack thereof.
And it terrifies me. But I have three real friends in real life. So keep that in mind too.
But tell us about your Twitter feed, because it fascinates me. I really love it. It does feel very organic. It plays really well into nostalgia. It's very interactive. It's very playful. It's very engaging, very positive, full of empathy, kindness, no negativity. It doesn't breed trollish behavior, even though I'm sure you still get some trolls. But what is the strategy and how did you do that? And walk us through that. Do you have an editorial calendar on Twitter?
I mean, I get hate every single day on Twitter. I mean, I can post about Mother Teresa and somebody will say, well, I hate her. Look, here's the thing about social media. If Jesus Christ himself came down, people would be snarky and say, what took you so long? You know what I mean? Like, people are angry. So I learned really early on not to be negative on social media because I didn't want to fuel that. I never saw Twitter as anything other than a little bit of promotion for the things that I loved. And sometimes it's my artists. And a lot of the time, 99% of the stuff I post has nothing to do with the people that I'm working with. And I realized that very quickly because not everybody of those 700,000 followers are going to care about this brand new indie artist that I'm working, but I'll post about them, but I'm not going to post only about the artists that I work with. And I've been really lucky that I've kind of created my social media that way too, even when I was working full time for other companies. They might have not appreciated the fact of me posting about competitors, but that stuff allowed me to have an audience and garner an audience so that when the time was right to post about my artist, and I have a much bigger audience. A lot of the times though, it's just stuff that I like. It's videos that I find or photos that I like and asking questions that I love reading the responses to. I'm not creating Spotify playlists out of the answers. I'm not harnessing data. It's really just me hanging out, reading really funny comments. Yeah. And so I'll tell the artists that when I'm working with them, or, I'll tell them stories about whenever I hire somebody, or whether, I want to hire an intern or assistants in past years, I'll look at their social media. And if I see one or two things that are negative on it, I can't work with them because you never know when. Look, I'll tell you a quick story. There was somebody that I absolutely wanted to hire, and I looked at their social media feed, and it turned out that they were insulting a lot. One of the biggest films of the year that we happen to distribute at a company that I worked for. So part of me was like, absolutely, you should have your own opinion about things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spread it with the world, because what we've seen with social media, you could have 700,000 followers, you can have 40 million, you could have 3 followers. If you hit the right tweet with the right person retweeting it, you're only 1 degree of separation away from being the front page of BuzzFeed magazine. And next thing you know, you've lost your job and your marriage, and people still don't realize that. And looking at, going back to the Kardashians, for instance, and what you can learn, I always tell the artists, go look at Taylor Swift's Instagram feed. Here it's like, here's me with my squad. Here's me riding a horse. Here's me sleeping on a plane by my single. Here's me riding a bike. Here's me taking a picture of my shoes. Here's me with a butterfly by my new album. The Kardashians are the same way. Social media, everybody is on there as well. Is that it's really about making sure that you're really kind of telling people your story, sharing the things that you love. And even if you don't like Kim Kardashian, even if you don't like Taylor Swift, you can learn from them. And I've kind of learned from other people's mistakes, crossing fingers, that not to get myself caught into. And primarily, because I'm a music fan, first and foremost, I would never slam anybody's music anyway, ever, even in real life. I'm not hiding anything. But again, just because you don't happen to like a certain artist doesn't necessarily mean that you have to post it on social media for everybody to read. Nobody cares. Nobody cares what you have to say, which is, whenever indie artists are they kind of get up in their own head too much about, well, I'm thinking about this or that or that or that or that. It's like, look, do what you want to do.
They're
Go with your gut.
overthinking it. Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Which is the brilliant thing to think about. Like, you can do a show about anything you guys want to. You can have all the different guests that you want. Because the fact is, nobody cares. Because nobody cares what Kim Kardashian has to say too. We all think that they do, but they really don't. She can leave Twitter and Instagram tomorrow, and it'll be big news for 12 hours. But the sun will rise the next day.
Yeah. It's really interesting. There was something that you said there about post a bike. You were talking about Taylor Swift. Post a bike. Here's a picture of buy my album. And we say this all the time. Social media was not created as a marketing tool. It was created as a means to socially network. So I'm really curious, Eric, are there any, you're really big on Twitter, you're posting a lot there. Are there any other social platforms that you're telling the people that you're working with to be on, to really focus on? Or is it mainly Twitter? Kind of what's your strategy, I guess, there? And are you bullish on any other platforms as well?
Yeah. The thing to remember is that nobody wants to be on the social media platform that came before you. So when I got on MySpace, we all left MySpace and went to Facebook. And then we went from Facebook to Twitter. But if Twitter was your first platform that you got on, you probably went to Facebook, but you absolutely did not go on MySpace. Mm-hmm. And my daughter is 17 years old. When she got on Twitter at 13, she got on Facebook, but she never used it. Now, when she went from Twitter to Instagram, all of the people whose first platform was Instagram might have been on Twitter. They were definitely not on Facebook. So it all depends on what kind of music that you play too and where your audience is. If you play pop music, your audience is Instagram and TikTok. If you play blues or jazz or classical or folk music or roots music, and your demographic is maybe 40 to 65 years old, you just only need to really be on Facebook because that's where it is. You don't need to worry about Twitter because that's probably a cesspool of information for you. You could be on Instagram, but most people on Instagram, don't seem to get a reaction unless they're kind of big elsewhere. And you definitely really don't need to be on TikTok. Your music is probably not going to survive on there unless you happen to catch lightning in a bottle and some 16-year-old amazing Instagrammer with 47 million followers uses a blues song as their dance, which is so unlikely anyway. So it really all depends on where your audience is. There's a bunch of 18-year-olds right now that I'm working with that are in a band that play blues music. They're staying on Facebook because they're not trying to attract other 18-year-olds who love Lady Gaga or Ariana Grande. They're looking to attract people who love B.B. King and John Lee Hooker, and those people are on Facebook. So that's part of the whole fun part, I think, of social media, is trying to find your audience. Because if you can't find your audience, then how is anybody else? How do you expect anybody else to try to figure out? I could figure out who's somebody's audience pretty quickly, only because I think I've worked with every kind of style of band under the sun. But for most bands, if they don't know who they are or whether they're like-minded artists would like them, they need to think about that. Because going back to the whole earned media, not everybody deserves and not everybody gets the all of the media that they want. So that's where sometimes the paid media structure comes in. And that's where social media is great. For a couple of bucks a day, you can promote your video. And look, if you're a roots band or a folk band and you're in Peterborough and you've got no fans whatsoever, you can go on Facebook, and for $3 a day, you can reach everybody who lives in Peterborough, Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo, Hamilton, Toronto, between the ages of 35 and 65 for $3 a day. For the next week, you'll probably end up with 500, 600, 700 views of that video. So you have to kind of know, you don't need to spend $1,000 on it. You can just spend a couple of dollars a day and try to find it. Who do you see when you're on stage? And try to figure out what kind of people they are as well. It's a little bit psychological. So when you're a business, you got to try to find out who your audience is and where they get their information from, because you can find them really easily now.
Yeah, I know we have to finish up here, Cody, but I have to ask, Eric, you're sort of at that point in your career where I presume that you could be somewhat picky about who you get to work with.
No.
Do you believe? Nah.
No.
But do you believe?
No, I'm working with everybody. I love it.
Okay, so to that point, what happens, because Cody and I are really drawn to working with good people, and you seem like a really good person, kind, humble, funny. What happens then in that case when you're saying if you do work with basically anyone, how do you work with bad people? Because there are good people who are just hardwired to be nice and empathetic in life, and there are others that are a little more on the narcissistic side. How do you navigate that?
I don't, because I don't work with bad people. I actually,
okay.
It's funny because I just said, no, work with everybody, because I thought you were driving out like, I get to pick and choose who I want to work with. So I only work with big people, and I don't. I work with independent artists without a record deal, without a management deal, without a distribution deal all the time. And in fact, I love that kind of stuff. But I've dropped people even before we've started. I've dropped people halfway through a campaign because they said something online that was racist or homophobic and completely blindsided me. I have no problem blocking people in real life. I'll block people on social media. I have no problem dropping people from there. But there are people, though, you got to find your comfort zone too. There are people who I love and who I admire, who I have worked with, that probably did some really nasty things in the 1960s and 70s, like most people who were successful did. They didn't treat women well. They weren't clean and sober. They probably did more drugs than Colombia. They were people that at the time they got a very big pass for, but for some way or others managed to survive this. So you kind of weigh this makes me uncomfortable to now. And I think living in a world of cancel culture where people are getting, fired and slammed and losing business because of something that they might have posted 10, 15 years ago. I think that put the fear into a lot of classic heritage, successful artists' hearts and minds for what they've done, that they are just waiting for the time bomb to fall on them. But I think for the most part, though, everybody's a good, kind person. I think, sometimes they just do stupid things that I just don't really want to be a part of.
Yeah, no, this is great. Like, I feel like we got so much value.
What did you two guys do? What did you do?
I know. What did I'm like,
I'm this through.
I'm still waiting to figure out what I did
right now.
Yeah. Thank God I'm not on Twitter that much.
I've always been nice, so I'm good.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but yeah. Hey, Eric, my man, thank you so much for for joining us on the Studio PTBO podcast. If somebody were to want to learn more about you, where is the best place that they can essentially reach you or find more about what you're doing in the music industry and PR?
Yeah, for sure. The best place to go to is thatericalper.com. That's the website for all the things that I post, but also it has all my social on there. It's got my phone number and the email on there as well. And I'm happy to always take calls and talk to people about ideas and possible business, but always, I'm always here just to kick around ideas as well.
Awesome, Eric, Neil, thank you everyone for tuning into another episode of the Studio PTBO podcast. We will see you soon.